Whole Man Academy. Because the world needs strong men. Whole Man Academy is changing the game for men around the world. It's for guys who want to live an epic life of fun and adventure, no matter what. We believe deep down, all men want to go on their own hero's journey to becoming resilient, confident, fearless, and fulfilled. Listening to be inspired by guys who don't settle for living a life of mediocrity. This is your call to action and call to adventure. Are you ready?
Okay, so this is the Whole Man Academy podcast, episode 138. My guest today is Goose McGrath, CEO of Dashdot Property. Now, we're going to talk about Dashdot in a minute because I think you've got a great story. And for the guys listening, they might be like, okay, well, why would I listen to this? And your tag of like, I went from a drug addict to a $20 million, that we're going to break that down a bit. But this is where people should be like, oh, this sounds interesting. But first of all, before we jump into that, tell the guys who are listening across the world, but like, how are you and where are you?
So I am well, thank you for asking. And I am, as we record this, I'm at my home in Phuket, Thailand, overlooking the Andaman Sea. So, I've managed to build a life that is suited for me, which is something I think is useful to consider. And we were actually just chatting about that kind of stuff a second ago. And for those who are just tuning in, don't worry, you're not just going to be listening to a freaking real estate guy. The fact that I've got a property business doesn't mean that we're going to be talking just waxing on about real estate. So I'm excited to get into it.
No, it's a good point because, I mean, this is, say 138 episodes now. And I would say I've tried to bring on inspiring, motivational, aspirational men from all across the world, but from all different backgrounds and sectors, because I learned that when I was listening to my own podcast, sometimes if you listen to just let's say the famous celebrities, you get the same story and you're never going to get an honest, truthful interview because they're going to be thinking, my sponsors are watching, or you've heard it 20 times before. And that's why
it's
I love
a program. It's a program. They've got a script. It's rolled out every time. Yeah.
And I spoke to a guy a while ago who interviewed a fairly famous guy, and I was like, "Oh, what was it like?" And he's like, "Honestly, it's one of the most boring ones I've done because the guy was like looked like he was reading from a script as he was talking." So that's why when I saw your story, I was like, this guy would be perfect to talk about resilience, about growth, about hardship, about everything else. So just quickly tell the guys, firstly, tell me about Dashdot, just in a nutshell, what it is, and then we'll come back to that so they understand what kind of you're in at the moment.
Yeah, so I think fundamentally the things to understand about Dashdot is that it's a service business. That's the first thing. We help people to invest in real estate. It's kind of like a buyer's agency service, although there's heaps more to it. Like we're far beyond what that is. But we help people to invest in real estate in Australia. But the fundamental things to understand about it in a way that kind of transcends that. Because if you're not a property person, who cares, right?
Yeah.
The things that you probably want to pay attention to are the fact that it's a service-based business. It's very hard to scale, but we've managed to scale it to be the largest of its kind in Australia. And the whole reason we've been able to do that is because we've been focused on mission and culture. And so there's a few pieces in there that I think are useful. I mean, nobody wants to hear the story of some real estate agent that's kind of made a whole bunch of money. But actually what we've done is we've actually built something that is fundamentally unique and is redefining the way people invest in real estate. And the reason that that's important is because it's helping to elevate the standards of wealth for thousands of people, literally thousands of people. And I believe that's the greatest impact that we can have in our community is by helping people to build wealth and directly and indirectly benefit the lives of those around them. So it's making a huge difference, and I'm really proud of it. Yeah.
I love the story, and we're going to delve into that because I know a lot of guys at the moment who are working in a job, and I've literally just written a couple of articles about it. And I said, you haven't truly got freedom if you're working for someone else, mainly because if they decide they don't want you anymore, you're out. And we had one or two guys in our membership who've been made redundant unexpectedly recently, and suddenly you look around and think, wow, the money I've been spending, which didn't seem unnecessary at the time, but now I've got zero coming in. And that's why I'm interested in talking to guys who have not just who are running a successful business, but also have gone from what you consider hardship to bringing that to the fore, because so many guys, it seems such an impossible dream to be working on that. So give the guys, let's go back. I mean, how old are you now?
I turned 38 last week, and
I
turned 38 last week. And
I'm 7 years older than you, and I'm still learning. I learn more about myself, especially when I've had kids, than anything else. And I guess you have. So take me back to, let's say, the kind of 25-year-old you, and where were you at that point?
Well, so mid-20s, I was basically heavily abusing drugs and alcohol for basically like 12 years. But I was doing that in a really high functioning way. So I managed to do that whilst also building a career, in organising festivals and organising. You're in the UK. I used to spend 6 months of the year in the UK doing festivals like Glastonbury and Boomtown and all of this kind of stuff in really significant management positions. I was probably top 1% in my industry for what I did globally. So I was, relatively high performer. But at the end of the day, I was going nowhere. Like, I was burnt out. I was working long hours. It was good for an adventure in my 20s.
Yeah.
But I got to kind of 30 years old. I had one failed marriage, and I'd lost all sense of self, and I was basically drowning and shrouding myself in drugs and alcohol because I didn't want to face up to who I was. And it wasn't until I was like 32 that I got sober and actually started to sort my life out. And on the 1st of April this year, so as we record this, it's late March. On the 1st of April this year, it'll be the 5th anniversary of starting our company. And so in 5 years, we've gotten the business to roughly a $25 million revenue business in 5 years. And when we started the business, we had $5,000. So me and my partner, Gabby, who's co-founder of the business, we had $5,000 to our name. That was it. We had no safety net, no backup, no networks, no nothing.
Yeah.
And so the transition from, like the difference between who I was at 25 and who I was at 32, there's not really a big difference. It was the same, like I was lost.
Yeah.
I lost all sense of self. I lost who I was. I lost my purpose. I lost my vision. I lost all of this kind of stuff. And in fact, the period of time from 25 to 32 was the period where I lost myself the most. And that was where it really became derailed, because I lost all sense of my own personal identity. It was only through sobriety that I managed to get that back. And it's only really been in the last 5 or 6 years that I've actually, anything that we would want to kind of hang the hat on and say, oh, just look at this success that's been created, that's only happened in the last 5 or 6 years. And so I fundamentally believe that anyone from any position can create any life that they want in 3 to 5 years. And I mean that. And that might sound like a flippant throwaway statement, but I literally mean, if you want to become a billionaire, you can probably do that in 5 years, if you really wanted to. If you want to get to a point where you're only working 2 days a week and you're making $1 million a year of income, you can probably do that in 3 to 5 years. You can basically create whatever it is. The biggest issue that people face is they actually don't take the time to work out what they want. And if you don't know what you want, then you have no chance of achieving it. Because you're going to be going somewhere, but you're going to be going to where? To what destination? And so getting clarity on that, I think, is the most important thing. And also understanding that it's going to change continuously over time. And so it's a continuous process of just defining and then designing your optimal life to get to where you want to get to. That's the only, objectively speaking, if I looked at my story from the outside, there's a tremendous amount of growth. We're one of the fastest growing companies in Australia. We're bootstrapped. We've built. You mentioned earlier about you can't really have freedom unless you work for yourself, basically, something along those lines. We can't do that working for somebody else. We've been recognised as one of the best places to work in Australia because I tried to build a business based around that idea that I've never had a real job and I would not want to work. We were like, how do we build a place that people would want to be?
Yeah.
And so my biggest concern is that the team are going to leave. But they won't, because we built a business where we try and empower them to have everything they need for that to be an integrated part of their life. And so I think you can do all of this stuff. So whatever situation you're in, you might be working a 9 to 5, you might hate it, whatever, you could be down in the dumps. 6 years ago, I was living on my office floor, addicted to drugs and alcohol. I'd wake up in the morning and do about half a gram of cocaine, and then drink half a bottle of straight vodka. And then I'd go and get my morning coffee.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever situation you're in, like, I'm pretty sure I've been there.
Yeah.
And you can create whatever you want, just if you can define and then design
it. There's multiple angles I'd love to talk about, but I just wanted for you the first one, because like addiction, I spoke to guys about porn addiction, about coffee's a good example, because you can kind of be addicted to coffee and everybody doesn't know, like it's a sociable addiction, if that makes sense. If you sit there and have like 6 coffees a day, no one's like, this guy's got a problem. But if you're sitting there looking at porn on your computer or snorting coke off your desk, people are going to realize there's an issue. So what was it? The decision you made to basically stop with the alcohol and the drugs, what was it that was it a light bulb moment, or was it something that kind of had been building?
So let me tell you a little bit about my story of addiction. So I broke my back when I was 14 years old in a motorbike accident.
Wow. Okay.
And as part of that, I ended up on morphine, prescribed morphine. I was on more morphine than a terminal cancer patient. And I know that because my mum's a nurse, and she was like, right, you're on like the highest legal dosage that could be given.
Yeah.
And I was on that for a really long period of time. In fact, I was recovered and I was going back to school and all of this kind of stuff. And I was getting ready for school one day, and I was just caught myself just spaced out staring into the mirror. I was 14 years old. And I thought, something wrong here. And I went to the doctor and I said, hey, just checking, like I'm still taking all this. And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. We're supposed to take you off that 6 months ago. So at 14 years old, I had a full-blown morphine addiction. And I said, I'm not going to be a victim of my circumstance. I'm not going to be an addict. That's not going to be my story. I went home and I took all the morphine and I threw it in the bin and I went cold turkey. And I made myself not miss a single day of school. Yeah. I said, I'm not going to be a slave to this. I'm not going to be a bitch to my circumstances. So I went to school every day, the cold sweats, the withdrawal symptoms, the whole thing, 14 years old, year 10 at school. And I went through that. Now, I know what it's like to experience addiction. I also know what it's like to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And as someone who has experienced addiction to morphine, to amphetamines, to alcohol, to cigarettes, I can talk from experience when I say this, so please don't think that this is a flippant kind of throwaway statement. Anyone can quit any substance or any addiction as long as they have a strong enough reason. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a strong enough reason, you will not give up. It's literally that simple. And so if I go to when I was sort of like, 30-ish, maybe 30, say 30-ish before I met my partner, Gabby, I had no reason. I literally didn't care that I knew that I was killing myself. Yeah. I didn't care. Now, the reason I didn't care is because I had stopped being my true self. So I had no self-love, because you can't love someone that you're not. And so I was just this shell of a person. I'd lost all my sense of self. And so I literally didn't care that I was killing myself. I was smoking heavily. I was doing the whole thing. I was way out of shape. Met my partner, Gabby. I didn't instantly get sober. In fact, she put up with that behavior, which was continuing to worsen, by the way, for, I don't know, let's say a year or so. And then one day, and we ended up working together, and we were at a festival site, and she basically said, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but I can't watch you kill yourself. So I'm going to go, and you just need to decide what you want to do, basically. And so, yeah, she left, and we were out on a camping festival site. I got 2 more weeks that I was on the job site, and I still kept playing up, but I knew that I had a decision to make, and I didn't care about killing myself. I didn't care the fact that I was drinking myself to an early grave. What I cared about was it was more important that I didn't lose Gabby. And so for that, I finally had a reason that made it worthwhile. Yeah. So I drove back to the city, met up with her, and I said, right, this is actually more important to me. And so I had to have a reason. Now, because I'd lost all sense of self and self-love and self-care, the reason couldn't be me. The reason had to be something that wasn't me, and it was Gabby. Now, that may sound a little bit like codependent or something like that, you're just doing it. No, you just have to actually have a validation of something that you want, something that's worth you dragging yourself up for. Now, the same thing also goes in business, by the way. I'll just kind of link that to that. Because if you start a business just to make money, you're probably going to go nowhere. But if you are linked to a higher purpose, something that's worth the sacrifice, because money is never worth the sacrifice. Yeah, what's your why? So you've got to have a reason that's big enough. Now, if you have a strong enough reason, you can quit any addiction. Mm-hmm. If you've got a porn addiction and you've got no reason to stop, like, all right, are you going to stop? Fucking no, because the dopamine's triggering and you have no reason to stop. Right? Same with any addiction. So you've got to find what that is, and you may even need to manufacture what it is in order to do that, but you can do it. And I would also say that the process of doing that, the process of exercising that level of discipline and restraint, and again, having done it several times with several substances throughout my life, I can talk from experience. The process of deciding to be in control is extremely empowering and sets you up for so much more success later in life, because you start to realize that if you can do that, you can do anything. Yeah. That is a big unlock, by the way.
Have you found, I often talk to guys about the new addiction, which is social media for a lot of people. And even for, I speak to a guy out in, who's on the Gold Coast 2 weeks ago. And of course, myself, like a lot of men, have to use social media, for example, for our business. Yeah. So, you don't have to, but it's a very useful tool. But it's funny, is it? Because like let's say it was a Coke addiction or something else, you wouldn't be like, oh, I'll be around Coke and I'll kind of get involved in it, but I won't touch it. And with social media, I wonder, have you found that at all, that you know, the social media can be a drawer of your time and energy? And
yeah, I don't like it. So when we first started the business, because bearing in mind, again, we started the business with $5,000, no safety net, no backup, never worked in the industry, didn't know anyone, didn't know, like nothing, right? So we've never really, never really done sales, market, never really built a business. But like, so we were, and you know, literally we had to choose between spending money on trying to grow the business or spending money on food, and we chose growing the business. And we would literally walk around the supermarket at lunchtime eating food off the shelves. That's how we'd go for lunch. We'd go to the supermarket. We go to the deli, we'd get some like meat from the deli and get some cheese off the shelves, walk around, eat the food, and then just walk out of there again.
Just a picnic.
Yeah, exactly. We called it a walking picnic. We were like, oh, yeah, great. Yeah, for a walking picnic. Now, part of the, like when you don't have a lot of money, like one of the best ways to start to build a presence online is to engage with social media. It's the easiest way to find an audience. You can do it for free, all of that kind of stuff. And at the time, Facebook was the best place for us to do that. That was just about 5 years ago. And so, man, I was heavy on there. You know, I was like posting lots of organic content, engaging with people. I was like heavily engaged with social media. And that was a really key part of growing the business. Now, I did that for like maybe a year or so. And then I realized that it was becoming toxic. And we had built a pretty good paid marketing engine at that point. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to stop now. And so it was kind of mid to late 2020. And when COVID hit, by the way, we had a 97% loss of revenue and 94% of our clients requested a refund. So we basically went to broke. We went from broke to some degree of success to basically fucked all over again.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, which we can dig into, because that was an extremely challenging and as a necessarily heavy amount of growth happened in that period of time. But it was late 2020 where I said, I'm not going to do this anymore, and I deleted all the social media. I said, I don't need it. I don't want it. I don't want it in my life. And my life got so much better. Like I didn't use socials at all for like 6 or 8 months. Now I use it occasionally. I use it probably more than I would like to, but it's still pretty truncated, and I use it as a tune out mechanism, as opposed to I actually don't really engage in comments, and I actually try not to even get into any kind of social engagement on there, because I don't want to build that connection with a machine like that. I use it as something to browse content, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
that thing with comments, I mean, it's you know, I looked at your Instagram, and obviously you'll put out interviews just like me. There'll be lots and lots and lots of clips of me talking, and people struggle with, they don't understand the context of a 15-second clip out of a whole interview. And I've had it, you know, there's a guy who's let's call it Carnivore MD, who, you know, is a big proponent of the carnivore diet. Really lovely guy, Dr. Anthony Chafee. And because he's got quite a big following, like my reels with little clips of him have had, you know, like 25,000 views, which for us is a lot, and, you know, 1,500 likes. But you'll look and half the comments will be people telling you you're completely wrong, and half the comments people telling you we love you, you're completely right. And I'm like, fucking hell, if you spent your time going backwards and forwards, because then they'll reply. And you know, the best thing I think, like you just said, is I see it as a tool, and you try and use it as best for you, but not get completely sucked in by it, because otherwise it can just while away hours of your time.
I think you need to decide what you want your life to be. I think it's really important. And like, you know, you're talking there about using the context of using social media as a mechanism to grow your business. You don't need to do that, right? So you can choose other ways. So for example, you can build a completely organic content-based business and grow very, very large with no paid advertising at all. There's thousands of examples of people that have done it, but you need to know that what you're signing up for is that. My preference would be to choose a pathway that allows me to grow my business that doesn't require that kind of activity, because that's not how I want to live my life. And I think there's a really important piece in there.
Yes.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, we have such a finite amount of time that we get to experience this magical thing that is happening. Sorry, just to draw on that, the fact that we get to experience full stop is just so fundamentally, phenomenally, you know, just insane, right? On every level. And so unless you are consciously auditing your life and saying, okay, is this bringing me joy? Is this bringing me closer to what is my ideal best life? Like you're at risk of wasting that really finite resource. I think one of the most liberating things that anyone can ever do is to realize they're going to die. Right. Yeah. And to really own that sense of mortality, because it's not going to drive you to be more ruthless with how you're going to dedicate your time to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And people chase these ideas without actually thinking about the consequences. You know, everyone thinks, oh, it'd be great to be a billionaire, right? Who wouldn't want $1 billion? Who wouldn't want to be a billionaire? Well, I'm not a billionaire, but I can see what's required to get from here, where I am, to there. And I'm quite happy to say no to that pathway. And I think you need to really think about, what are you doing and how are you spending your time? And is it actually genuinely creating the life that you really want? And the life that you want is going to be dictated by your personal values.
Mm-hmm.
So you spoke earlier about your family. Family is not high on my values list. Now, I love my parents and I'm like all good, but it's just not high on my values list. Like I don't sit there thinking, oh, fuck, you know what I want to do? I want to go hang out. I schedule time to call my parents and shit because I know that's what I need to do to make them happy, right? And that's good, and I respect that, but it's not really high for me. Somebody else's family is going to be really high on the values list. And if that is the case, then, you know, maybe think about designing your life in a way that supports that, because you get a lot of men who struggle with this idea that they should be successful. They have all this weight of like responsibility on their shoulders of what they think they should be as the provider, as the, you know, the success merchant, the this and that and the other. And they also, what they end up doing is they live a life that isn't true to their values. They become unhappy. Their marriages become shit. You know, they wake up in 30 or 40 years wondering, what the fuck have I done with my life?
Yeah.
You know, and the reality of the situation is you could create whatever life you want. If you recognize just a couple of key things, specifically, what are your values and are you designing your life?
Mm-hmm. That was where, from podcasts when I've spoken about my own situation, it was a podcast I used to listen to from a guy who was the English guy in the States, but he had a podcast called Mindset by Design. And his big thing was like, you know, how do you design your life? And I remember sitting there, still working in the city, still doing 200 hours a month at a desk, earning good money, but not enjoying it, and thinking, I've never thought about what I truly want. And I recently put a clip out where I said, you know, I have a big problem with the media where they manipulate you, and, you know, whether it's for nefarious purposes or just to make you want stuff that you probably don't need. And I was like, I wonder as a young man, and as a 18-year-old, as a 28-year-old man, how much of what I thought I wanted wasn't because I wanted it, but because what had been kind of, you know, subconsciously put inside me. And I don't think that for most men, well, I know most men don't take the time, like you said, to sit there and be like, what do I actually want? And some, when you ask them, will be like, I don't know, because I've never thought about it. Because we're not taught that at school, are we?
No, we're not taught that at school. And one of the problems when people are first approaching that question is they get scared because they don't know. And then they start to worry, what if they pick something, whatever the thing is, they start to worry, what if they pick the wrong thing or whatever. And so if you're listening to this, you have the permission to get it wrong. Like whatever you just, and the first time you start on that journey, I promise you, like, I'm 100% certain when I say this, you will get it wrong. There's almost no chance that when you first start asking yourself the question of what do I want my life to look like, that you're going to get it right. Like, because you haven't had the time to really flesh out the context. Like you can't do it from a standing start to go, all right, I've never thought about this. Now I've got it. It is not going to happen. In fact, when I first started, and by the way, it's okay to think, oh, it's going to be fucking Lambos and mansions and whatever. If I go back and you look at what I was, because I've kept all my writings, I used to write down every single day, the vision of my life, every single day. I did that for 4 years. And if I go back early on, it's like, it's all the trimming. So it's all the accoutrements, you know.
I'm sure mine says Aston Martin somewhere. Yeah.
I think I was like, you know, helicopters and jets and 6 cars and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, that may or may not be correct for you. Probably isn't correct, by the way. Here's the Cliff Notes version. Probably isn't actually what you really want. But it's still useful, because when we're going from a standing start to trying to work out how to create something better for ourselves, it's useful to have something that's going to pull us forward. And so sometimes just thinking of that really big thing, like it could be like private jet. I'm going to fly around in a private jet. The dopamine that you can get from that can give you the fuel that you need to take the action that is required to move you closer to the life that you really want, which you haven't actually worked out what it is. Yeah. Right? So sometimes it can be enough to prompt the action. So like, I think that's okay. I just, what I know to be true is that when you get further down the journey, you start to realize that all that stuff you thought you wanted, you never really wanted anyway. And what you really wanted was there's a lot more attainable. And so, you know, the life that you want is really not that far away.
I know I've seen it with statistics of like, there's a, let's say a salary that you might earn, say in the UK, of like once you get past like 75 grand a year, that covers, you know, if you're living a modest life. And I've met people that have got, funny if you say private jets, and, you know, to someone that isn't from that world because they haven't got that kind of budget, you look and be like, wow, that all sounds amazing. You realize that the challenges don't change. That, well, the challenges are there, they just don't change in the way that just because you've got more money, life doesn't necessarily become easier. I know with, how to put it, some of the guys I met through Tony Robbins events, that they seemed more stressed because they were trying to scale and scale and scale and scale. Yeah. Like you said, at one point you look and go, do you know what? That's, you know, bigger isn't always better. It's like, can you get to that stage where you're quite happy where you are? So what have you learned about yourself in this last, let's say, from going from the $5,000 in your pocket to where you are now? Like, what are the couple of things you've looked back and you're like, fucking hell, that's really become apparent?
So I think that a lot of advice from people who have achieved some success can actually be misplaced, particularly for people that are early on in the journey. I think that whatever you want is going to be very hard to achieve in the very first instance. And I think you need to be ready to work very hard. But you need to understand that you shouldn't need to do that forever as well.
Yeah.
So I think that if you are in a place where you're currently, like you said earlier, you're working 200 hours a month, doing it in a job that you don't like, or you're just for the very first time asking yourself, like, is this the life that I really want?
Yeah.
Which by the way was the question that Gabby and I started asking ourselves when I said, all right, I'm going to go sober and all that kind of stuff. We started looking around and going, we're working at events, like we're going nowhere fast. Like, is this the life we want?
Yeah.
And we said, no, it's not the life we want. And we said, okay, well, what are we going to do to get out of it? We thought let's invest in real estate, and we bought the wrong property in the wrong place at the wrong time, and, you know, lost a bunch of money, and that kind of set us on the path to try and work out how to do it properly, and slowly ended up starting Dashdot. You've got to ask yourself, like, is this creating the life that I want? To get from that place, whatever that place is for you, to a life that you start to be devoid of desires, which is a really interesting context, which we can talk about in a moment, is fucking hard, right? And it's going to be hard work. And so you need to accept that. But also what you need to accept is that it is only through that challenge that you're really going to become the person that's worthy of the life that you really want to create.
Yeah.
There's no easy path. There's no easy path to change. You're fundamentally looking to reinvent or redesign who you are. And that's a tough, like ask your wife how birth felt, right? I'm just going to say it was pretty painful.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go through the same thing for yourself. And so, you know, I can sit here and talk about, you know, my point of view on the world right now, but that's actually not that useful for someone who's trying to get to the point of view now. What I can say is that making money is really useful. There is a point at which it starts to have diminishing returns. Now, it's going to be different for everyone, but it's it's a lot higher than you read in the papers, but it's a lot lower than they sell you on Instagram, right? So it's much more attainable. And so I think that you just need to be ready to go on a massive personal development journey in order to do that. Because, as I say, you can create any life you want in 3 to 5 years. And one thing I would say, that the thing that's probably changed my life the most, and that's only been in the last, let me go through some stages, because in the first year or so, when I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, Gabby actually asked me, she said, what is driving you? And it was fear. A lot of people say you're going to be driven by, you know, all these kind of altruistic things, but it was fear, honestly. And I said to her straight up, it's fear of failure. We had no fallback. We had no backup option. And so that's okay too. Like, so whatever fuel you've got, use it.
Use it.
Use it. Doesn't really matter what it is. Just fucking use it, right? So if it's dopamine, if it's fear, whatever, just put it in the jetpack and go. Pick a direction, go hard. And it's not going to be easy, and you're going to have lots of ups and downs, no matter what the journey is. Doesn't matter whether it's a business or some other thing, right? It's not going to be easy, and you're going to have lots of moments where you're going to feel like quitting, and they're the moments that you need to not quit.
Yeah.
Now, it is okay, by the way, to quit. You need to decide, like, when you're chasing a folly and when you're not. but 9 times out of 10, sticking to it is going to be the answer. And the thing that's changed my life most in the noting what I just said about the first part of the journey was fueled by fear. The thing that's changed my life most in the last 18 months is, well, actually, we're probably just a little over 12 months now. It was early last year, and I was spending a bit of time in the States, and I was, we'd had some degree of success, and I was continuing to try and fuel my vision of the future and try and pull myself further forward. And so I had to keep dreaming bigger dreams in order to get more dopamine hits and all that kind of stuff. And once a quarter, myself and Gabby do a life planning session where we sit down and we go, what do we want? Are we aligned with the vision? Are we, we need to redesign anything? And I'm trying to paint a bigger and bigger picture, more grand, more. And I got to the end of our weekend of doing all this stuff, and I felt empty. And I thought, something's not right here. Like, shouldn't I feel pumped up and jacked up and motivated? And I realized that 90% of the stuff that I'd been saying that I wanted, I really didn't want. And it was the first time that I really started to step away from the desires and start to actually step into gratitude. And that one mantra that I've been through that period of time, I went through a lot of development, and I started. There was a story that I heard from Wayne Dyer, and he was talking about the kahunas in Hawaii. So everyone's heard of like the big kahuna. Yeah. Well, a kahuna is a witch doctor, basically, in Hawaii, right? Or a shaman, or whatever you want to say. And Wayne Dyer who's passed away, but he's a really great, he's got a great books and stuff out there. He met this kahuna and he said, so what's the secret to becoming a kahuna? Like, how do you go to kahuna school? Do you study kahuna 101? What's the deal? And the kahuna said to him, and he said, they raise us to have no fear and no doubt. And I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I was like, and then I started asking myself, who would I be and who would I become if I had no fear and no doubt? And if you ask yourself that question, man, a lot of things change. Yeah. So every day, every single day for several months, I just write down, I live without fear and doubt. And my world started to change. Mm-hmm. I started to realize that I was in a place where I didn't need like anything beyond what I currently had was, incremental improvements. It's like, oh, what do I want? Like a bigger apartment? Like, I mean, who cares? You know what I mean? Like,
how big do you need?
More of an ocean view. I mean, like, what is it? And so that's also really confronting too. And so you got to be prepared to step into that. But living without fear and doubt, I think, is kind of the biggest thing. Because you're going to constantly doubt yourself. You're going to doubt, are you on the right path? You're going to doubt who you are. And so if you can start to let go of that and realize that all of that noise that you feel, all of that anxiety, all of that fear, all of that doubt, all of that uncertainty, you don't actually need it. Like, it's not actually real. And you can actually choose to let it go. Mm-hmm. That, like, as a business owner, like, how many times might you think, shit, my business is going to fail? Probably happens a fair bit, right? Normal, because you've got these anxiety triggers, these cortisol spikes where you think, oh, everything's going to go back. It's not real. It's not true. And so, in a very real sense, and I mean this not in a kind of woo sense, I mean this in a scientific fashion. We literally design our own reality. Our perception dictates the way what we perceive in the world, mm-hmm. like in a very absolute, scientifically proven way. And so realistically, all you need to do is control your mind and control the experience you have on the planet. And that's probably what I most want people to understand, because I like to talk about escaping the status quo. I've never been one to kind of fit within the box of the normal construct. And I think if you can escape the status quo in a way that's in line with your values, so whatever that means to you, it could be creating financial freedom, it could be just living life on your own terms. Mm-hmm. I think the key to doing that is mastering the living without fear and doubt and stepping into the reality that you really most desire. Mm. That would be the thing that I'd want to encourage people to do the most.
So much of that is built, isn't it, about resilience? Because, as you said, people don't have growth in business or health or whatever in a straight line. There's usually knockbacks. And you mentioned earlier about, it's funny when you mentioned COVID, and the algorithms pick it up, and you get like suppressed on social media when you talk about it. But, I saw myself, with the whole Nomad Academy, to state the obvious, we were an growing events-based business, and literally, I think 2 or 3 nights before lockdowns happened, I'd hosted a dinner for like 15 men in London. and and then all the nonsense started, and all the brainwashed people started doing whatever they were told, and it kind of went downhill from there. And I just wonder for you, because you said obviously your business was affected by it, and that's the reason I talk about the lockdowns as an example, is that was totally out of our control.
Yeah.
Now, you could control how you reacted to it, but we saw, I listened to stories where people might have had 3 restaurants, 2 hotels, and a nightclub, a thriving business, and doing nothing wrong, and suddenly they all get shut down, and suddenly it's like, shit, what do I do now? Because you've gone to fucking zero from making really good money. And I heard some really terrible stories about some people that like killed themselves because they found it so hard to lose their business. So talk a bit about resilience, because how did you react when that happened? And I mean, I was still laughing when people go, oh, there was 3 weeks to flatten the curve, which is the joke, and you're like, yeah, they didn't fucking stop there. But what was it like for you?
So one of the benefits, or one of the probably the competitive advantages that certainly I've got, is the fact that I have been at the bottom. I think it's a massive competitive advantage. The fact that I have been, like I'm not going to delve into all the stories in my 20s, but I went as far as I could go without getting to a point where I wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of the whole kind of drug scene and everything like that. So I've been to the edges, man, and I know what it's like to be at the bottom. I know, like most of the people I know from that period of life, my life are dead.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a competitive advantage, because when you know how to eat shit, right, when the shit gets served up, you know how to get it down.
Yeah, I know what this is. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what this is. Come on, gobble, gobble, let's go. And if you're going to eat shit, don't nibble. So when we started the business, as I mentioned, like we started with nothing, and that was really hard. And we went from zero for the first few months, and then we went from sort of like very nominal amounts of revenue to like 180 grand a month. And we thought we were rock stars. And we thought, right, we're the God's gift to business. Look at us. Like, we just thought we'd solved everything. We just ego through the roof, you know, and so we were humming along, and I thought we were killing it, but we were making no profit because we had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
And so I remember speaking to a mentor that I got in that period of time. He said, "You know what your problem is, Goose?" He said, "You've got no business acumen." And I was like, "Man, smack around the head." Like I was like, "Damn it!" He's right. That was in January of 2020, and I was like, "Oh, damn it, he's right." And we started to hire and we started to grow, the team a little bit and stuff like that. And we said, "You know what we need to do? We need to walk backwards before we walk forward." So we let go of the team. We started to do a strategic descale. That was in February and into March, and by the time we got to the end of March, it was just myself and Gabby and one assistant, Amy, who's still with the business today. She joined basically 2 months after we started the business. And then we had this 100% unconditional, 100% money back guarantee policy, because we thought that was a good idea. So we had between March and April, we had 97% loss of incoming revenue, and 94% of our existing clients said, "Oh, that clause in the contract, you just have all the money back. Thanks."
Yeah.
And so we'd moved into like a really nice apartment, and we'd done all this stuff, because we thought we were legends, right? And we then had to move to the cheapest apartment we could find, and we had to go back to eating beans out of cans, and we had to, to be frank, we couldn't pay everyone back. We had to say, "Hey, sorry, COVID, can we put this on a payment plan?" So it took us 9 months to. We gave everyone. No one got. We paid everyone, but we had to pay the money. It took us 9 months. And we didn't know if we were going to make it, and it was winter in Australia, by the way, as well. And, it was grim. And we didn't know if we were going to make it. And the benefit of having been at the bottom is, that you can get back up off the floor. And so I had to ask myself several times, I was like, what's the worst going to happen? Worst can happen. Okay, eventually the business goes bust. And we have to move back in with our parents, and then we'll do something else. Like really, how bad is it going to get? And once you can, Tim Ferriss would call that fear setting, where you basically go, okay, walk into that future. Okay, how bad could this be? And if you're going to survive it, it's probably not that bad.
Yeah.
So I took the time to go and sit and roll around in it and go, okay, how shit can this be? But it was tough, man. And it was only through, realistically, there was a couple of key moments of encouragement from my family. I remember one time I was literally just about to throw in the towel, and my brother, he just gave me some words of encouragement, and he said, man, don't quit. He said, you've got a great business, you're doing great work, and you're helping people. Don't quit now, just see it through. And I was like, man, okay, let's do it. But it was tough. And then just a little bit of context, because we kind of set the scene of how grim it was. But that was also the time that we really decided what kind of business we wanted to build, because we hadn't really built a really good business up to that point. And we said, okay, we now have this time. We now have this time to define what we want the next phase of the journey to look like. So how would we build an iconic company, like a truly iconic company? One that would, change the world, basically. And we knew that would revolve around people and culture and, all of this kind of stuff, technology, and that was where we set the foundation. So that time that we had there, we actually got to really think about how do we build the infrastructure or the artifacts that we would need to build a world-class culture.
Yeah.
Now, so, we talk about, growing to 25 million in revenue, but realistically, that's only happened in the last 3 years, because it was on the 1st of January 2021, we were a team of 4.
Yeah.
18 months later, we were a team of 85. So we basically, in three years, basically, or three to 4 years, we basically grew from nothing to about 25 million. And so but it was all because we had that time. We had that time to roll around in the darkness. We had that time to actually sit in it. And without that, we would have never become this business.
It's so interesting, that story, isn't it? Because like you say, if everything's always easy, you don't learn anything when things are, when you're winning all the time and when every deal comes your way. And you usually, I've seen that, I've learned so much when I've fucking sat in my office and just been like, that's gone wrong, this has gone right. What do I need to do? I need to go back to my core values and get rid of some people that I, made some mistakes by letting them have their fingers in pies in some of my business. And it is funny because you look back, and I know there's that saying like, how can your worst day be your best day? But sometimes, like you said, going from shit to success and then reversing back again means you just go, right, do you know what, let's look at it. And I wonder for you, who have you, or you just mentioned like brother, but who have you had to speak to over the years apart from Gabby? Because I guess it's like Emma, my partner, we're together all the time, but sometimes you need an external someone to just like give you a fucking bird's eye view and an honest opinion.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to find a mentor in 2021. So January 2021, got a mentor, coach, whatever you want to call it. But he's got a 9-figure business. His business does a couple $100 million of revenue a year, and I'm really grateful for that, because I've been able to meet with him every week since then, and to have someone who's that far ahead. So you can go, oh my God, this thing's right. He's like, yeah, okay, we know how to fix that, and just someone to tell you that it's okay, and just someone to be there, because man, entrepreneurship's lonely, and Gabby and I talk about it all the time. Like, imagine if we didn't have each other, because we do talk to. Imagine if it's just you. It's crazy. Entrepreneurship is extremely lonely, and it's very hard to find people that are on that same journey. It's very rare that your friend group is going to transgress that journey as well, because you're probably going to be growing differently. And so all of a sudden you think you have people around you, but then you don't. I have zero, animosity or anything but I'm not friends with the people that I was friends with in the past. Barring 3 people, right? Barring 3 people who we still keep in semi-regular contact, but we're not in each other's lives, And so the faster you grow, the lonelier it becomes. The further you go, the lonelier it gets. And so you need to get stronger and stronger and stronger within yourself as well. I think it's very important to find a community, or very important to find someone, right? So I know you have a community of then finding something that is going to be useful to you. I'm lucky enough to have found a great mentor. I'm lucky enough to be in business with my partner, so we have each other. And so that's been super useful. But outside of that, honestly, I've tried lots of ways to try and find our tribe, but no, I have not met anyone that's been on the growth trajectory that we're on. Yeah. And so it's very, very, very hard. Like I can go into masterminds of business owners and stuff, and they're growing at 10% a year, and we're growing at 800% a year, and it's like
there's a disconnect.
There's a disconnect. It's like, okay, I love you, but like I'll have the conversation with you today, and in a month we're different people, right? And so it's been actually really, really challenging. But for me, I'm naturally an introvert, so It's all of my socializing capacity gets done through company. So we have 100 team members now, and so necessarily like a lot of my time is spent communicating with people in the team. But yeah,
it's so interesting because, like you said, that different trajectory, and similar to myself, I've got one or two friends that are my best friend I've been mates with since we were like 16, and he's been on like the journey with me. But you do find that some people, because I'd say I'm like a relentless action taker. And what I mean is, if you and I are in business together, I will stay up till silly o'clock in the morning if we need to, and I'll get on a call at 2 in the morning or whatever we need to do to get it. I'm not like bit tired, I'll do it next week. Those people drive me fucking mad. And like you say, I've got around some people that at the moment, at the moment you meet them, you think, oh, this is the right person. And then a few months later, you're like, no, this isn't working for me. So that's why the podcast has been great, because I do my background research on people that I invite on, or if they approach me, similar to yourself. And I'm like, it takes me about 1 minute usually to work out if I want them on. And I've had some people that I made the mistake years ago that I didn't have them on the podcast, and I talked to them, and then you think, this doesn't. Whereas I'm feeling you and I, if we removed the thousands of miles between us, that you could talk for a few hours about business and optimization and stuff like that. So what does the next year hold for you? Like, I know that you're on a growth kind of trajectory. So what does the next year hold?
Really interesting question. So I'm at a very I'm at a turning point, I think, which is cool. And it's not something I've actually spoken about really much before either. Dashdot as a company, it can be $1 billion company. And that's not just some kind of pie in the sky thing. It's like, it's got all the mechanics there to be $1 billion company.
Yeah.
I want to ride motorbikes through Tibet, and there's I feel like there's a slightly divergent path between myself and the business, not in a way that insinuates any kind of lack of passion for it, but just that, you need to at some point recognize that you're not the business and the business is not you.
Yeah.
Unless you want it to be, right? And that's okay too. But that's not what I want. And so right now, what I'm trying to do is set Dashdot up to become the best version of itself, and also simultaneously allow me to become the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And those two things can coexist. But it's kind of like when you raise a child, you don't want that child to be dependent on you forever. You want to teach it all the things that it needs to learn and set it free into the world, and hope that it becomes an amazing human. And it's the same kind of thing with great business, I think. Dashdot can become one of the truly iconic companies of its kind in Australia. I think honestly it could become like a household name. Yeah. And so I'm setting it up for it to go on that journey, and that's really exciting, and it's kind of like setting us up to go on a different journey in our lives as well. And kind of going back to like a lot of the thematics that we've touched on in this podcast already. It's really about consciously designing your life, because I could continue to put in the go on that, dig deep,
grind,
push hard, grind, do that, and it's like, but it's really a case, and I can do it. I know I have the capability to do it.
Yeah. The
question you've got to ask yourself is, is that actually going to be? Am I actually designing the life that I want?
Yeah.
And so that's really the process that I'm at right now. And you get to a place as well where, certainly things aren't important to me. Aside from the fact I'm buying a new motorbike at the moment, but things are not actually important. Experiences are, so for me, it's how do I expand the tapestry of experience that I get.
I love it. And this is why I enjoy these podcasts, because like you've given me various light bulb moments, let alone the guys that will be listening. And last question is, any more plans to head back to London or to the UK? Because if you do, who wants to meet you for a coffee and have a beer or a steak together.
I haven't been there in a while now, and I don't have that much of a pull to come back, because the weather's not that great. I live on a beach in Thailand. So.
We're in mid-March, and it's been raining on and off for fucking weeks. And before that, obviously it's cold, and we're just coming out of that. I mean, literally today it's a bit of sunshine, but I've said to my partner, because we've got little kids, we haven't been away abroad for various reasons, in the last 6 months, and I'm like, I need some sunshine. So that's why when I talk to guys like you on the Gold Coast, or if you're in Bali, or if people are in Miami, or what have you, I'm like, I just try and I garner some of their sunshine energy, basically. But
yeah, and I think I think for me this is an important part of life design as well, because we were living in we were living in some cool places, but we really thought about like, what does our ideal life look like?
Yeah.
And personally, I love living close to the equator. I love living close to the beach. So yeah, you should try pop down here sometime.
Yeah, it's I've got multiple invites from across the world. So Emma and I always like when our little one, who's a little bit older, is it slightly easier to travel, but nothing's easy with 3 boys, to be honest. But
yeah, I can imagine.
Well, look, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I knew as soon as I saw your bio, I was like, this is going to be a good interview. And maybe at some point, perhaps we'll pick up with again in like a year's time or something, and see where you're riding your motorbike.
Yeah, it sounds good, man. Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you, mate. Cheers, Goose.
Whole Man Academy.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast, brother. Now, just quickly, are you prepared to identify the weak points that are holding you back and keeping you awake at night? I don't know. All you got to do is complete our cutting-edge self-analysis tool to discover exactly what you need to do to stop wasting your life and become the man you know you can be. All you got to do is pop in your email address, spend just 3 minutes answering the powerful and specific questions that will start to unveil a hidden world to you, and then just let the tool work its magic. The question is your dream life worth taking 3 minutes to complete? You'll also get your results and a free copy of our Destroy Your Weakness ebook, super popular with men, and it will start to help you with taking action on your life. It takes just 3 minutes, you'll get instant action advice, and the book could change your life. Click the link in the show notes now.
Thanks for listening. Remember to sign up to our game-changing weekly e-letter that's read by men around the world. Sign up at wholemanacademy.com/movement. Until next time.